So the other day, after Notre Dame opened its college football season with a close win over Florida State, Brian Kelly, the Fighting Irish head coach, did something that drives me to drink. He took an all-time great quotation and butchered it. This happened as Kelly was approached for an interview by an ESPN reporter who asked, "What do you think about your team's ability to withstand Florida State's impressive comeback?" Kelly replied with, "Yeah, I'm in favor of execution. Maybe our entire team needs to be executed after tonight." What? The actual line dates back to October 6th, 1980, and the aftermath of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers' 23-0 loss at Chicago. A reporter asked John McKay, the Bucs head coach, "So what do you think of your team's execution?" And McKay replied, "I'm in favor of it." It was perfect. Perfectly executed, perfectly poignant, my favorite sports quote of all time. And Brian Kelly not only stole it, but ruined it. My name is Jeff Pearlman. I'm the New York Times bestselling author of 9 books and the host of Two Writers Slinging Yang, the podcast where one writer, me, talks writing with another writer every single week. Today's guest is Jeanette Howard, the fantastic former, and it's a long list, writer for The National, for Sports Illustrated, for Newsday, for The Athletic, for a million different places. And she's also the co-author of Billie Jean King's new best-selling book, All In, an autobiography. This is episode number 224. Let's sling some yang. All right, Jeanette. So I was thinking about something. I was looking at your resume, and I was thinking how if you go on like baseballreference.com, just as an example, and you click on a player, it'll tell you people who had like similar careers to that player. And I feel like you and I have actually had fairly similar.
I was thinking the same thing. That's so funny.
We both wrote for Newsday. We both wrote for Sports Illustrated. We both wrote for The Athletic. I feel like I'm not saying we'd be like number one, like absolutely similar, but we've had like comparable, weird kind of parallel runs.
True. So you might be my brother, long lost brother.
Oh yeah, who knew? Let me answer first. All right. I'm always fascinated by this, and I had a long talk on this show with John Wertheim about this. We're both at a point in our career where it's a little bit weird, where you're at this age where you've been around a long time and you've accomplished a good amount, probably what you wanted to accomplish. But you're also sort of like, at least for me, you're kind of like, well, I don't want to do really cheap freelance anymore. And there isn't a big magazine to write for anymore. And websites seem to be hiring cheaper and cheaper people or going to videos. Like, what the fuck are we supposed to do?
Well, that's why I'm in books, because, and not that industry hasn't been slammed either, but I was at ESPN for 10 years. And after that round of layoffs, I don't even know how many rounds I had been through where they miss you. And then 6th or 7th time at a place, they finally whack you. They go salary hunting or they go whatever for experience or whatever. But after the ESPN thing, that was 2017. And I went to The Athletic briefly and I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I felt like that. I love thinking about stuff. I love learning stuff. I love writing. I love people, talking to people, all that stuff. I feel like, I was telling somebody when I did this latest book is that when I got into journalism in the late 70s, I'm 60. When I got into journalism, it was seen as a form of public service back then. It was not so long after Watergate and the whole thing. And it was something like you thought it was a way to do good in a way.
Right.
And so it does matter to me, like the venue and if there's any overarching meaning and all those things. So that's why I've gone to books, because I think it's, I've always preferred long form, and I think that it's a more contemplative, thoughtful thing. And this way you get to control your destiny at least somewhat more than the day-to-day, like toss. Like you feel like you're in a dryer on a tumble cycle,
Right. Wait, I have a conversation. This is a conversation I've never had. Okay. You and I were working for The Athletic at the same time.
Yeah.
And it was basically me, you, Phil Taylor, Lisa Olson, I think, were writing columns every week for The Athletic. Right. That's a pretty established force. I'm not saying like, we're Shakespeare, but it's a pretty good foursome with a lot of experience and blah, blah, blah. And when I got we weren't, I wasn't hired. I was doing, it was basically freelance. You were probably the same. I don't know. We got X amount per week. And I was told, oh, it's going to be great. And we're going to do it where if you get X number of clicks or subscribers, you get X amount of money and that'll be great and blah, blah, blah. And it kind of just petered out where one day they were like, yeah, we're not really doing this. I never saw any money for clicks or views or anything like that. Just one day they were kind of like, see ya. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was wondering what your experience here was like, if that happened to you as well. Or didn't.
They approached me to write for them. I was, very excited to do it. It was on contract. And the first sort of ominous thing was like, well, pitch us a list of ideas and we'll tell you if we like any. So you already don't feel like you're part of the process, like that you're, and there was sort of this illusion that we're going to be hiring staffers in the future, which, would be preferable for a lot of reasons. But no, part of the thing that made me tired of the whole thing was that change in philosophy, because initially it was like, we want national columns. Then they came back and said, oh, national columns, nobody wants them anymore. We want to do long form. But then it was like, they wanted you to do these really high quality long form stories, but they didn't want to pay you very much and they didn't want you to travel. And they, I don't even know if they would have paid expenses. So then it's like, it's kind of a ridiculous exercise, especially if you're committed to doing something well, And so I just thought, this is a dead end. And it might work for beat writers or people that are on staff, but it wasn't going to work for me. And so I thought I had to come up with some different alternatives. I'm glad they're still around. In the beginning, I wondered if it was an enterprise like a lot of things where they get it up and running and then they sell it for $1 zillion and then they don't care what happens to the people that are there. But they still own it, so that's good.
Do you miss print? Are you someone who's like, oh man, print?
No, I actually think so many stupid things were done that it's kind of one of those things. If you look at it as a bloodless sort of business enterprise, they deserve the troubles they've had because they were slow to adjust. Even, when I remember when I worked at the Washington Post, they were very slow to go digital and do a website. And this was the mid 90s. And to their credit, they did this kind of mea culpa story about how we blew it. We blew $30 million on something that didn't work. Donnie Graham, Katharine Graham's son, commissioned the story, and Kara Swisher, who now is at the New York Times and worked on staff, did it. And it was basically this self-examination of what they did wrong. But I remember the time I really thought, I'm going to kill myself. I'm just going to throw myself off the balcony was when I was at Newsday and I went to this talk in New York at some, what's it called? The Century Club. And there was a guy from the Times, and they supposedly were on the ball and had it going on and figuring out a little bit, the gold standard. And this guy showed up in a bow tie and he said, I just want to tell you about something I learned about on the way over here today. It's called a podcast.
Oh, no.
And I thought, oh, shit. I thought, it's over. It's so fucking over. I remember, and there was a balcony, and I looked at it, and I thought, if anybody asks, they'll just ask what he talked about, this has been like a 20 years recurring psychosis. And you just get to the point where, no, I don't miss it. And I wish that they could figure it out better. And I think, I'm not sure they still have. Even this is weird. This is sort of referential, but it's a current example. The book we just wrote, Billie Jean King book, just made the bestseller list. And the review came out on the web on August 17th. They ran it in the book review 2 weeks later. Then we made the bestseller list, but the book review, the week that the book, the New York Review of Books, the week that the review was in, the bestseller list didn't correspond to the actual list.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, no wonder. It's just, there's 3 things going on at the same time. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Did I just read that or not?
I've never understood that with the Times list. You find out you're on it, and then you have to wait 2 weeks to see that you're on it in print. It's never made any sense.
But then it's online. So it's like, I don't get it, but I don't have to.
Wait, so you alluded, I wanted to ask you a lot about this. So Billie Jean King's autobiography, All In. And I was thinking about something funny. My first job in journalism was at the Nashville Tennessean, and I did a story about sports books. And I got a big interview. I don't want to brag. I got a big phone interview with Jack McCallum. And I was so excited because he had a book that just came out, Shack Attack with Shaquille O'Neal. And I was like 22 years old, and I asked him, so who did more of the writing, you or Shaquille O'Neal?
Yeah.
So you, who did more of the writing, Jeanette? You or
Billy? No, Billy. No, I have to say, in total seriousness, Billy, she works verbally, but she went over every line and every word, and we did it together. And we didn't do sessions where I send her copy, she sends it back edited. I would write passages. We would get on the phone or, do this and talk on FaceTime. And we wrote it that way. And so she actually did contribute, and she's got that old time grammar training. And I remember there was a line about, this is how minute and perfectionist she is. She only has one sibling. And the line read as the eldest child. And she said, shouldn't it be elder?
Oh. And
I was like, yeah, you're right.
Wow.
Yeah. No, she's highly engaged, and she's got a lot of, things that she wants to say. She knows what she wants to say. And so it's more a question of finding the narrative arc and eliminating stuff because she's done so much.
Right. So it might be just because I'm an asshole, but the idea of writing a book with somebody has never really appealed to me. I think because I like having my own voice and I like being the narrator and that whole thing and blah, blah, blah. So it seems kind of hard to write in someone else's voice and to take and to collaborate and blah, blah, blah. Am I overstating that?
No, it's different. I had only done a few things in the past, like first person stuff where you interview somebody at length and as a device, you write it in first person. I had never done anything like this. And really, I had never thought about doing it. I had been asked a few times, but it was, I was just, the reason I wanted to do this was she's such a consequential figure in history. And I had known her since 1987 when I was covering the NBA. I was at the Grand Hyatt in New York, and she was in the dining room. And I walked up to her and I said, thank you for making it possible. I introduced myself and I said, thank you for making it possible for me to be a sports writer.
Wow.
Because women's sports writing at that time had just started when I was in college, which, and so, and it was very contentious and all that, but none of it would have happened without Title IX and her and a bunch of other stuff. And so I'd known her for a long time, and, I love her to death. And I just wanted to do it because all the issues that she cares about are stuff that I deeply care about. But it's different. I was thinking about that old Deadspin thing about no favor or discretion. When you're a journalist, you're sort of governed by that principle. And when you're writing a book for somebody, it's their book. You always have to remember it's their book. And I found that there's a lot that's different about it and a lot that's actually the same as writing any kind of profile or long form stuff.
Wait, so do you have to write in her voice? Is that even really a thing?
Yeah, I think it's a thing, but I think that it's not the thing people think. I think people think it's an auditory thing only.
Right.
And actually what it really is this constellation of ideas and insights and manner of speaking, and, the way they talk is part of it, but it's also how they think. And if when you're talking about a voice, it's this constellation of things that come through, and patterns of thought even, or just, word choice or all those things. So again, it's not that different from writing anything else, but you do kind of, just by spending so much time, you want it to sound like them. You don't want it to sound like you.
But how do you do that?
It's really important to, really, really, it sounds fundamental, but just really, really listen, without any pretext or judgment, or just listen and ask them why and try to put it together and try to, think it through. And then you go back and you push or you challenge, or you say that doesn't ring authentic, or, the logic doesn't track, or, when you say that sounds like bullshit, or oh, I didn't know that, why did that happen? And, it's just the usual process and it comes through, and then you start to feel when you spend that much time together, what's important to them, what is, like, when they used to do photographs in a pan and the image emerges onto the piece of paper, it starts to come up. You start to see it.
Like I always think like a lazy word choice that I'm sure you used to do, because we all used to do it at some point, is you'd be like, if you want to sound conversational, right? You'd be like, after all, like that's a term it now drives me crazy. After all, he's really a left-hander, like that kind of thing. So when you're trying to write in someone's voice and trying to write conversational, the same thing? Like, does it need to sound like you're having a conversation with the people?
Yeah. And she's like that. There were some times where I'm trying to think, there was a word drolly.
Yeah.
And she's like, nah, and it was more for just expediency or convenience. And she's like, nah, I would never say that. But I think, again, it depends. It has to sound like Jonathan Siegel was the editor, and Billy says a few things. It was very funny. He's this very esteemed editor, and she has some expressions like "geez Louise," and he wrote me back once, and he said, "That's a bridge too far." He just he let her say "El Choco," but he said, "No, geez Louise."
But it's interesting, right? Because like, isn't that just because someone says "geez Louise" a lot doesn't necessarily mean that they would write "geez Louise"? Like, isn't it kind of a weird thing? Like, you're trying to figure out.
Yeah, and I told her that I think, Jonathan is this classic editor. He's 76, 77 years old. His writers have won 7 Pulitzers, all these things, and he's kind of the Academy kind of guy. Right. He did Agassi's autobiography. He was the editor for that. He did Arthur Ashe's. He did Life on the Run with Bill Bradley. He's a classicist,
Yeah.
And I told Billy, Billy's sort of the other, people's champion and all that. And I told her, I said, you're in a funny position because you're this consequential figure in history. And then anybody that knows you knows that you're this irrepressible kind of effusive person that does say that kind of stuff. But I think he was always aware, and I think she is to an extent too, that what she's talking about stuff that is historically significant, and you want to convey it in a way that has the sort of seriousness it demands without being too arch.
Right.
So it's a balance, and you just have to find it. But and I think he was right about that. I think there are times when you just, you don't want to kind of just blow it off, because she is somebody said she seemed like she was like Forrest Gump. She was in every picture with everybody from like, Obama to Gloria Steinem to Dolores Huerta to Mandela to, you name it. Queen Elizabeth. It's,
Right.
So.
Right.
Bobby Kennedy. So there is that quality to her life that's needs to be respected.
Is there when you're working on this book, like it's 496 pages, which is a thick book. It's not a small book. Yeah. I've had this talk with authors so many times when we talk about books. Like, are people going to be intimidated by the thickness of a book?
Well, my goal was to keep it to 400. I think the appendix are like 40 some pages.
Yeah.
Just like, mammoth. And somebody said to me, it's all on the internet. I was like, it's sort of true, but it's actually not. The records were so bad then. And this is Billy's, wish to make sure that's historically accurate. There actually isn't complete records of her career or women's tennis in the beginning. And so we did a lot of original research to do those appendix, but the result was it's like 45 freaking pages,
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. So we could have put a thumb drive, taped to the cover. That might have been better.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's good.
Well, this is funny though. The other thing that happened is some of the books have what's called a deco edge. It's like a rough edge on the where you leaf through. And somebody on Amazon they gave it 1 star because they said the binding is the poorest quality they've ever seen.
Oh my God.
It's like, dude, it's supposed to be that way. Like, it's.
Wait, I just want to say, I've had a lot of reviews where it's like poor binding, poor binding. And those are your 1 star reviews are poor binding. And you're like, do you have any idea what you're doing to me?
I know.
Jesus Christ, man. Come on.
I know.
I didn't bind the book.
You know, and he put a picture up too.
That's awesome. Wait, was it you wrote a book about 15 years ago called The Rivals, Chris Everett versus Martina Navratilova, their epic duels and extraordinary friendships, which was not with them. It wasn't written with them per se. It was your own book, sort of via interviews. Is one way more satisfying than the other way? Do you prefer writing a book where you are not writing with someone? It doesn't matter.
No, it didn't matter to me. I think it becomes a different book, but I would do this again. My kind of litmus test is always just, is it something I really care about deeply enough to spend that much time, because it's a big commitment. It's, as you know, you've written so many great books. It's in your head all the time, So it's like, it has to be something I really love. That one was just interesting to me. It kind of came by accident. David Hershey, who was a publisher, it was right after Agassi Sampras beat Agassi in their dotage at the U.S. Open. And I saw him at a restaurant and he said, who's going to write the Agassi Sampras book? And I had been thinking about the one I did. And I said, that's not the rivalry book. It's this one. And he said, I'd buy that book. And I said, I'd write that book. And that's how it happened. And he didn't end up buying it. He got outbid by somebody else. It wasn't like big money, but he got outbid and I ended up writing it. But that was the sort of genesis of that. I'd been thinking about writing a book for the same things we were talking about. I wanted a career break, and that was 2005. I wanted a career break because I was tired of the whole volatility of the business, you know?
Right.
And here we are. It's still going on.
Before we continue with Two Writers Slinging Yang, a quick word from our sponsor.
Hey, this is Jeff Perlman. I'm here with my daughter Casey, who will be leaving for college next fall with dreams of becoming a high school history teacher.
Fashion designer.
I thought your dream was to educate.
It is, but ever since you introduced me to 503 Sports, kings of the throwback sports merchandise, my eyes have been open to the wonders of fashion.
I don't get it.
Dad, my new dream is to come up with all sorts of amazing designs for 503 Sports. So when the USFL games start up later this year, I'll have created all this merchandise for fans to wear to the stadiums of their favorite teams. Go Wranglers! Go Stars! Go Stallions!
Casey, the USFL died more than 30 years ago. It's not a thing anymore.
Well, that makes my future look pretty bleak, doesn't it?
All right, so I'm in the middle. I'm finishing up a book. I have a book due in October, which means I'll hand it in November. About Bo Jackson. I'm writing a biography of Bo Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm losing my shit, right? I'm at the point where I'm writing every day and you're trying to churn out whatever, 1,500, 2,000 words a day.
Yeah.
I'm seriously losing my mind. Like I'm actually, I think, sort of losing my mind where I have papers all over the room and I keep looking at Twitter because I'm bored, but then I have to get, and the whole thing, right? And I have dreams about Bo Jackson where I can't fall asleep because all I'm thinking about is Bo Jackson. I'm really at that point. I'm at that point where I'm like about to fucking snap.
Yeah.
How do you deal with this shit? I find book writing to be fucking nightmarish.
I don't find it nightmarish, but I think it's nightmarish for the people around me. I don't find it nightmarish. Like I get really linear where I'll get up at 6 and I'll work till midnight.
You'll get up at 6 a.m. and work till midnight.
Oh yeah. And I'll eat I'll eat at my computer and I'll drink 4 Red Bulls after I've had 2 lattes and, I'll just eat anything. I lose weight, which is good, but I don't like to be broken because by the time I get it all in my head up there, who knows where it comes from when you're plucking out the words and sentences. I don't like to be interrupted when I finally get in that deep concentration place where it's all available to you, all the information and ideas and, all that. But I know what you mean. I've had days where I sit there and it's just like nothing's coming or I hate everything I wrote or, it's too long, I tend to write too long. I'm not like a economist. So that was always the joke about me with when I was at the Washington Post and I left. The joke was I was always late and I always wrote too long, and I got to pick when to leave. They didn't whack me first.
Hey, do you feel like for books the best thing is to just put everything on the page, spew it out, write long, and chop later?
I've always done that with everything. If I write a column and it's supposed to be 9, I'll write 1,400 words. I just do. Because I have so much in my head. I fall in love with all of it, or I just remember stuff, or I think it's, I want it to be stylistically nice, or I want it to be anecdotal, or I want it to be, something. Or it used to drive me crazy when people didn't put the breaks, like at Sports Illustrated, when they don't put the line breaks where you want them.
Oh, yeah.
Drives me crazy.
Wait, we need to talk about this. So you and I were at Sports Illustrated. It's weird. I don't be insulted if the answer is yes. Have we ever been in the actual same room together?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Because you were at SI from 95 to 99.
Yeah.
I was at SI from 96 to 01. But here's what interests me. Okay, because you talked about this. SI was the hardest editing place I've ever been in my life. It's probably the best place I've ever worked in my life as far as quality of output and regular blah, blah, blah. But the editing was insane. And sometimes your stories would come out unrecognizable. You'd have editors put in words, you didn't know what they meant.
Right.
They'd be like, we're just going to move this paragraph here. And you're like, no, you can't just move that paragraph. What? As a person who likes to write long and who obviously takes pride in her work, was that just a freaking gut-wrenching 4 years for you?
Yeah. And, the thing that you find out, the dirty little secret, is that nobody there admits it. Like when they're out and about, like they don't admit that it's happening to them.
Yeah.
And I knew people that, that was the timing style, that they would get people to send in files, and then some editor god in New York would sit there and digest it all into 1,000 words in time. And Sports Illustrated wasn't that, bad about it, but it was an permanent culture of editors, and the writers, to me, I often felt as though they thought the writers were, with a few notable exceptions, were sort of replaceable in a way, and that it was the institution and the permanent culture of editors, and that whoever was the editor of the magazine at the time kind of told everybody else in the sports world what they were going to think that week, like what mattered.
Yeah.
And if they didn't think it mattered, it didn't matter. And that kind of unilateral existence, they got used to it. And so, yeah, it did bug me, because I remember saying to a guy once, why did you guys hire me? I was happy where I was. I mean, why did you hire me? This is who I am. This is who I sound like. I've always been this way. By the time they hired me, I was, I forget, 36 maybe. I've certainly written enough.
Well, you came from where? They hired you from where?
Washington Post.
And I'm sure you were like me, maybe you weren't though. To me, SI was the dream, right? I wanted to work at SI. My dream growing up was to write for Sports Illustrated. I love Sports Illustrated. And I thought once you get to SI, you stay there for, I'm going to stay here for 40 years. I'm going to be writing for this place forever. And this is going to be my thing. And I got hired in 06 and I got hired in 96 and I left in 02. I was like, I don't really enjoy this.
I didn't enjoy it. It's a different experience there for women. And it actually wasn't an easy decision for me, because I loved the Washington Post. I really did.
Right.
And Ben Bradley was still running it. And, Henry Allen was still writing features. And it was a really vibrant place, and I loved it. And they had money to go do things, and I was an enterprise writer. But so it wasn't an easy decision for me. And I knew that their history of treatment of women was very poor.
Right.
And so I just thought, one of the things that tipped the balance was I had worked for one of the editors, Rob Flater, at the National, and had a great experience with him. And he's a great editor, the best editor I'd ever been with. He and David Granger, up until that point. And so I thought, he's there. And then I thought, and he was part of the people, the little group that approached me to work there. And then the other thing was, as a long form writer, it was the epitome, and so I thought I'll just go. If I don't like it, I'll leave. And that's what happened. I just found that when they switched to Bill Colson, it was not a good time for me. Mark Malvoy hired me. Bill Colson was a difficult transition for me personally. And I think I got deposed when I was there for 2 lawsuits after he took over, discrimination lawsuits. And I think in one of them, they told me, I don't know if this is accurate, but that when he took over, there were 44 women. Within 2 years, there were 19 left. It just was sort of irrespective of your personality or talents, or it was an ellipse in every woman's career where you do great, you get there, it's like, and you leave and you do well again. And it's just not worth it. It's just, and I always felt I had agency to, like, if I don't like it, I'll leave. And that's what I did,
Hey, there are a couple of things that are interesting that I want to talk about this. Number one, I always remember being in a meeting. Remember how they would do, we're probably in the same room because they did where they flew every writer in and they would do like the state of SI meeting and they take you out for a nice dinner. You were at some of those, I'm guessing, no?
A couple, yeah.
I remember one time being in maybe my first one. And number one, you're looking around and you're like, there's one black guy in this room, Phil Taylor. There's 2 women in this room. If you were there at the time, because I remember Kelly Anderson had been promoted.
Yeah.
Sally Jenkins had left. And then I remember Phil Taylor asked an editor whose name rhymed with Schmieder Harry whether what they were doing to diversify the staff. And his response was, we're trying, but we can't really find any worthy writers. Yeah. If anyone knows of any, we're obviously taking suggestions.
Oh, good. That's
and
good.
I'm interested, because when we were there, I remember showing up and every office had the swimsuit calendar hanging up. Every editor's office had a half naked woman or 80% naked woman hanging in their office.
Yeah.
Did you feel it mainly in the lack of opportunities in certain stories? How did it actually manifest itself with you personally?
I want to be careful and not be unfair. I can only tell you from my point of view. I don't know if they were guilty of this. I'll tell you how it felt. It felt like, and there were a couple times I went in, I would go up, I'd fly up once in a while to pitch ideas because everything was remote then. And a lot of people didn't work remote then. And, you want to kind of have a connection with these people. And I would go up and pitch ideas, and I was banging around the hallways, going in people's offices, kicking a few ideas. And I walked into Flater's office, and he, my boss from the National, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm pitching these ideas." And he said, "Like what?" And I told him a few, and I said, "But they told me it was already assigned." And he said, "Hang on, that's not assigned." And he gets on his thing, beep, calls the guy in and says, "Why don't you give her that story?" That's not assigned. And the guy's like, oh, absolutely. We'll do that. Absolutely. I'll do that. Right? And I'm like, whoa. And I'm thinking, I'm going to pay for this. And I did pay for it. The guy never gave me another story. But it was like you were treated like a stenographer sometimes.
Yeah.
And I actually said that at one point. I said to them, I'm not a stenographer. If you send me to do the story, I'm good enough to do the story.
Was it hard to leave, or were you like, fuck this?
No. No. It was important to get a job before I left. That was the only thing that was hard, was, staying long enough to wait till I have a job instead of just, quitting because you just feel like,
Wait, you left from SI to Newsday?
Yeah.
I went from SI to Newsday too. I swear to God, I went from SI to Newsday. I was done with sports. I could not deal with sports.
I remember that, yeah.
They offered me a job writing for the front of the Page 2, I think it was called, magazine site. They're like, this is when I knew newspapers were in trouble. All we want you to do is roam around New York City and find 2 or 3 long stories a month, 2,000 words. I was like, this is the greatest job ever. This is awesome.
Right.
And then one day they're like, yeah, so I was there a year. It was great. They're like, the editor now wants every employee to come in 4 days a week and work from their desk. And stories are going to be a lot shorter. And I lived an hour and 20 minutes away. And I did not take a job. I did not leave Sports Illustrated to go to Newsday to sit on the LIE for an hour and 20 minutes. And that was when I left to write for. Did you see when you were at Newsday, you were there 99 to 08. Was that a good barometer for you of the decline of newspaper and the influence of newspaper?
Yeah, and I don't want to say it's their fault because it was endemic to the whole business, but yeah, I think that that nobody could figure it out, and so the only thing they knew to do was keep cutting staff, cutting coverage, cutting staff, cutting coverage, and it just seemed like they were just always waiting for Armageddon, and the philosophies would change, like the other places I was before and since, would change every 10 minutes. This is what we're going to try now. And then it would be, no, we're going to try this. And then it would be, no, we're going to try that. And then it would, and it just became sort of lunacy and now I hear of friends that are still in the business and they actually get their traffic printouts and the stories are chosen based on what resonated with people before. And I was like, so how does that make sense going forward? And somebody was telling me that they live in a city where the team is contending for the title, but they don't. It's a town with 2 teams in each sport, but they don't resonate as well in the traffic. So they're just not going to cover them, even though they're contending for the championship. And it's just kind of like that one never happened before. Yep. So I just think they've got it figured out. And even ESPN, when I was there for 10 years, I used to always say, people would get frustrated and I'd say, it's a TV network that happened to have a website. And a lot of the things that have happened in the journalism business have been because of the mode of delivery has changed, Right. And that has sort of had a consequence for the content. But I mean, if you look at ESPN now, it's the same. They used to do some really nice work and now it's all videos. That's all that's left. So
I was writing for Bleacher Report magazine for a while, BR Mag.
Yeah.
I was hired by this guy, Matt Sullivan, and we want to take on SI and ESPN. We want to do what they're doing. We want to write these long form, blah, blah, blah. My first story was, I think, 12,000 words, blah, blah, blah. And now it's just a bunch of videos on a page. Because I think, but here's the thing. Here's where we're in trouble. They're basically saying, we can put these videos up, but we can pay a writer X amount, and we're basically going to get the same number of views. Actually, we might get more views for the video. So from a business standpoint, what exactly is our benefit paying you an annual salary?
Yeah, they're not wrong. I mean, that's what I mean. I used to say at ESPN, they're not wrong. And this is when we all got laid off. There was a couple thousand of us in 2017, I think. It was like, I can see why they're doing it. I think now when young people want to talk, I just always say I'd master every platform so that you have choices, and even now, like when sometimes people call me about work, it's about it's not about written work. It's about other stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think if anybody who's hanging on to just write, it's really tough. You have to have a presence in other places, and plan on making money there. And if you want to write the script for a treatment for a TV series or a show or a documentary or a podcast pitch or something else, a book proposal. But even books are getting tough, I mean, I just feel, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel you start so far ahead if you're doing some iconic figure versus like if you just had this super fantastic idea about something obscure, unless you're like Lauren Hillenbrand, it's a little tough, Wait,
I love that you brought that up. I always say the 2 books that defy sort of that model are Seabiscuit and Boys in the Boat, where you're but that's lightning in a bottle. That is absolute lightning in a bottle.
Do you think people can explain it?
I can't. How do you explain a long ago horse and a bunch of Olympic rowers from 1936? I think. How do you explain that?
Yeah.
Great writing, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read Boys in the Boat yet, but I in her case, I think she's extraordinary.
I agree with you on the like every book I've written. Some have sold really well, some haven't sold well, right? But '86 Mets, big topic. Barry Bonds, big topic. Roger Clemens, big topic. Brett Favre, big topic. Bo Jackson, big topic. Showtime Lakers, big topic. Shaq, Kobe. Like, my books aren't selling because of me. They're selling because of the topics. And I think if you're aware of that, like, you've written 2 books about big topics.
Right.
I just don't think people are buying books because of us, because of our names. And I say that as a huge fan of person.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's almost like, I think, being like some jazz singer, you might be really great and you're still working the basement clubs, like,
right.
And it's like, I remember, and I realized this in college, I was walking through the student union, this woman was singing and it was so beautiful. And I went and I watched the show, it was one of those student shows. And I was walking away and I'm thinking, like, what does it take to make it? What does it take? And it's like, it's really unsatisfying when someone tells you, oh, it's really serendipitous. And you think like, no. But
it is.
Yeah.
Really?
It is.
I mean, I think hard work matters. I do
too. But you better find some fucking way to enjoy it, because if you don't, it's going to be miserable.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Are you like me at all? Like, my dream was to become a sports writer. Yours as well when you were growing up?
I changed because, remember, there weren't any women. So this is funny. I thought Shirley Povich was a woman.
Oh, funny. I thought Lee Montville was a woman.
So Shirley Povich was syndicated in the Pittsburgh Press. I grew up in Pittsburgh. And I would read his columns and, he was fabulous. He and Red Smith, to me, were on par. And then I got to work with him later, which was spectacular. But I thought he was a woman. So I didn't really know that there weren't any women when I was really young. I was just a sports nut because I grew up in Pittsburgh when all those teams, the Steelers and the Pirates, were winning titles. And even the Penguins weren't bad, So I didn't really switch into it until I was well into college. I wanted to be in architecture, but I'm an idiot with math, no matter how hard I try. And then I was really into biology and genetics and all that stuff because I had some great teachers in high school. And so I was on this twin track because when I was a little kid, I had a neighborhood newspaper that I made and went around and sold.
What was it called?
The Broadway Dispatch.
Wait, and you would do it in your house?
Yeah, my mom was a teacher and she at a Catholic school, and they had this mimeograph machine, and she brought it home, and I would make the stencils and I'd write stories about my neighbors, my brother and I. And honest to God, I think we just got high on the fumes because we thought it was hysterical. We'd be like writing this in the basement and we'd be like howling, laughing at ourselves. And I think we were just sniffing the mimeograph machine.
Would people pay for it? People would buy it?
Yeah, man. Are you kidding? Quarter.
Do you still have them sitting around your house somewhere?
I have a couple. My aunt told me, I don't know, not so long ago, she still had a few, my godmother. So she gave them to me.
And did that put the love of something in you?
Well, my dad was a graphic designer, an artist. And when I was a kid, they had always told me, both my parents, they wouldn't buy us other stuff. But if you ever wanted a book, they would never say no.
Wow.
So I would always get books and read books. And so I had a kind of good upbringing that way as far as background. And then in high school, teachers would always encourage me and tell me that I was good at it. But I never really thought, I came from a really blue collar place. My parents didn't make much money. And I thought I have to get out of college with a job.
Right.
And so when I went, I was going to do this other stuff, and writing was the only thing I loved. So that's how I got into it. But I got into it late. I was always taking writing classes because I enjoyed it, but I didn't really go full scale until I was second term junior.
I always try to find the oldest story I can find by someone. Here's a challenge for you. I'm going to read your lead to a story. I'm going to leave out the school and the name of the star. If you get this, you win. Okay. With underdog blank holding a precarious 1-point lead with just over 2 minutes left in the game, blank star back, and big play specialist Billy Callahan went in motion right, veered upfield at the snap, and rocketed past the blank secondary. This is in the Pittsburgh Press, November 15th, 1981.
It is? That was when I was an intern. They wouldn't let me write sports. I was on the city desk, and I would go do that on my own on the weekends.
Wait, you would actually say, I'm going to be at this game and I'll send you something?
No, I told them I want to be a sports writer, and they wouldn't give me the internship. my school paper, I was the sports editor at the Pitt News, and you needed an internship to graduate. They were telling me to go to sports information. I said, I don't want to do that. And they said, no, you really should go. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And I had a big fight with the advisor to the newspaper and the advisor of the journalism department. And I said, let me go for the interview. Just let me go to the interview for the Pittsburgh Press internship. Uh-huh. And so I had the interview with this guy, Leo Koberlin. And when I walked in, I had this is so pathetic now. I had a little scrapbook of clips from the Pitt News. That's awesome. Like in a blue binder, and he looked at me and he said, you have the internship. And I said, seriously? And he said, yeah, you have it, but you have to go to the city desk. And I said, all right. So they put me on the city desk, but I went to the sports editor and said, I want to be a sports writer. Can I do high school games? So they let me do high school games.
Was the general idea basically women don't write sports?
Yeah.
That was it. Women don't write sports.
Yeah. How would you know what you're talking about? You didn't play sports, and I played women's sports, but so what? But I used to say, well, if you ascribe to that, you wiped out about, 20 centuries of Western thought, because people write about Aristotle and they weren't fucking Aristotle either, pal.
Right. That's good.
Out of my way.
Yeah.
Get out of the way. So, it was worse then, but I actually cried when I read this. One of my colleagues wrote a story for the New York Times, former colleague, in June, about being raped when she was a 22-year-old sports writer.
I read that. Amazing.
And when she came to Newsday, I took her out to lunch and said, if I can help you, anything, just let me know. And we had a nice lunch and the whole thing. And it was like, we kept in touch all these years, just loosely, cheering each other when something good happens or something sad happens. You say, thinking of you. And when I read that, I just got all choked up about it, because I was so sorry for the pain that she had to go through.
Right.
Right. And there's a lot of women like that whose stories, they got knocked sideways or they just quit. They just quit. And I was lucky that I didn't have a choice. Like, I had to make it, I had to make it, because I wasn't going to go back to my little steel town neighborhood and work in the pizza joint or something.
Did you find, as a woman working in the field, one of my favorite responses to a ball player being gross, I forgot who the writer was. She was AP. I think she was in Pittsburgh when Dave Parker was naked and invited her to quote unquote suck on this. And she said, I would if I could find it beneath all that fat.
There's a lot of variations of that comeback.
Have you found in your career, it is better to be that way or to ignore the comments and the stupidity?
No, it's better, because they're doing it for the benefit of the people around you too. And you've got to cut that. You got to stop it. And I always felt, especially back then, I don't know, it's been a long time since anything happened with me, but at the time, I wasn't so sure about the people governing the leagues, except the NBA. Like David Stern always told us, that was my first beat. And there were 3 of us women, and he told all of us individually, if you have any trouble, you call me directly and I will take care of it.
Wow.
So guys knew that. And I do think it helped, but other sports, it wasn't like that. But I would, even with the Pistons, when I covered the Pistons, I would handle it myself. Like if, I remember they traded for Mark Aguirre and
Adrian Danley for Mark Aguirre.
Yeah. And he had been there maybe 3 weeks, and I had been on the beat 3 years. And we go to Chicago, and he had some of his boys come in the locker room, and they're all rah, 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 doing the whole thing, like the sycophant thing. And I walked in and he starts going, whoa, 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 and making a big scene. Like, I don't know why, just because they were there. And I just, and we were on good terms, he and I liked him. I liked him a lot. I still like him. And I just walked up to him and I said, I've been here for 3 weeks, man. And you see me every day. Shut the fuck up. Stop it.
Right.
Just stop it. Now your boys are here and you're going to do this to me. Stop it.
Did it work?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But, there's been stupid stories. A lot of times other sports writers were a problem. There was one guy that said he was going to punch me in the face.
Why?
They got drunk in the hospitality room at the NBA Finals and were calling all the Pistons and waking them up. Then they tried to blame it on me. And they called me Deep Throat. And that has a sexual connotation.
Yeah.
And they had written it on a tablet in the hospitality room that was usually for when the buses were going to the arena. John Ed Howard, Deep Throat. And I said, who did it? And a couple of people were like, I don't know. And then somebody told me. So he said he was going to kick your ass. And if he wasn't big enough, he'd get some help to do it. And so I saw him in the hallway and I just told him, I said, I want you to hit me right here and don't miss. I said, because I'm going to own your house, your dog, your car, your whole life. I said, so don't miss.
That's awesome.
Little man.
That's so good. That's awesome. Have you seen that guy?
It's crazy. It's not like I'm brave or anything else. You just get like crazy. Like, I'm not going to put up with this the rest of my life. Like, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
And I really, at any juncture, if it got too miserable, I would have stopped. But I never felt like I was defenseless or without choices. I just thought, like, I'm choosing to be here. It's my world too, and I'm not going to take it, But there's times when you just have to kind of let it roll. But I just firmly believed you're better off to just deal with them directly and make them feel you as a person.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I was in black majority leagues, and they're all sort of that way. Baseball's not, but baseball was by far worse. The black majority leagues, the guys get it, way better.
I have always felt that way too.
Yeah. I just feel like if it wasn't for black guys, I wouldn't have had a career,
Baseball, I always found the worst, and I covered baseball at SI, but I always thought baseball, most narrow-minded, most sheltered,
Yeah. And so, and I didn't do too much baseball, and I until I got to Newsday, I didn't really, I tried to do as little as I can because I didn't enjoy it.
Right.
And, forget that it's so tedious.
Right. Wait,
season.
I'm required to ask everyone who appears on this podcast this question. What is the angriest the subject has ever been at you?
There's a couple times. They're kind of funny.
They always are in hindsight. They're horrible in the moment.
Yeah, no, can I tell you two?
Please.
Okay. Chuck Daly, who I loved, was the coach of the Pistons. He was very good to me. Years later, we were friendly. He was in Orlando, and I called him, and he showed me his house they gave him for coaching. We were really good friends, but, and he almost got fired every other week, but before they won. And he was mad at me because they had some team meeting. Jack McCloskey, the GM, was always undermining him. They always had this thing, no matter how well they did, Jack thought he would have done better if he were the coach. And so, we would be at practice, and some 7-foot guy would walk in and would say, "Who's that?" And he'd say, Chuck would say, "I don't know." And Jack would just add somebody to the roster and whack someone and not tell him. So it was that kind of on the ledge existed. So there was this team meeting, and some of the guys told me what happened and what they're unhappy about and blah, blah. And we're in New York City, and it was like a little scoop, So we're in New York City in the Garden press room, and he comes up to me and he's mad at me, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you writing about that? You got to learn to be more like, and he mentioned a guy in Detroit who was been around forever. And he would write stories like the meatballs at Tiger Stadium are the best of any buffet. And, and he's yelling at me about this, and I should learn a lesson from this guy. And I said, I would rather put my mouth on a tailpipe and kill myself. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. And then you see each other the next day, and it's like, how you doing? He's like, you need me? I'm like, nah,
Yeah, totally.
So that was one. The other one was, and this is not funny, but when Monica Seles was attacked by Gunther Parch and disappeared.
Yeah.
The first story they gave me at Sports Illustrated was go find Monica Seles. and do a story on her. Right. And I had ethical objections to it because she had declared she didn't want to be found.
Right.
Yeah. And, but then she did turn up in public at these award show, and some people, and I was able to cobble something together. But one of the things that was going around was this story that when she was skipped Wimbledon, there was a rumor that she was pregnant, and that her agent called her. And I think the rumor at the time was she was dating Donald Trump, which is just horrifying but even, I hope it's not true.
You don't like Donald Trump?
I know, it's weird. The story was that the agent called her and said that she was a defending champ at Wimbledon and she was skipping it. And she said, just let me tell something. Just let me tell them anything, please. Just let me make some statement. Let me tell them you're not pregnant. And the rejoinder from her was, how do you know I'm not? Which I don't know if she was or not, but the story was about her family's secrecy and fear of things. And then the horrible irony that had happened to her, that she got attacked because her father was a conscientious objector in the war, and they were afraid of being, anyway, they had all these fears, and she traveled incognito and everything else. And then she's the one that gets stabbed. So the agent calls me livid, screaming at me, like, how could you print that? How could you print that? How could you print that? And I said, I'm sorry, but I have to tell you, it's all over the place. I heard that story from like 5 people. And she said, well, didn't it make an impression on you at all that it never got printed anywhere? And I said, no, I get stuff like that all the time.
Right.
Yeah. But she was really mad at me. And she said, you will never get any access to any of our athletes again. She was at one of the big firms, but it wasn't true. She was just mad.
Yeah. I always say that. Wait, let me follow up. I love this question. I'm going to say you have to answer this. Who's the biggest asshole athlete you ever dealt with?
Asshole. Oh, man. Jack Morris was a pretty nasty piece of work.
Quite an ornery guy, right?
Oh, obscene to women. Like, I'm sure he's just obscene in general. But Jennifer Fry, the late, great Jennifer Fry, was just out of Harvard at college and working in Detroit. And he said, I don't talk to women unless I'm on top of them or they're on top of me. Ugh. And, he just got in trouble for imitating an Asian person on the radio. I mean, the guy has 9 lives. He was difficult. But, again, I didn't have to deal too much with him. I'm trying to think. I mean, some of the guys, like Barry Bonds was nice to me after you push back a little. Like some guys, were actually all right.
The key is to push back, right? The key really is like, most people, like they're testing you. They're surrounded by their buddies, as you said. They're in this world. They want to show that they're the big boss. And then if you push back, it kind of snaps them out of it, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I just think, I never felt like they were better than me. That sounds awful, but I just never felt like I just want to talk to somebody and get out. Like, like that's all. And so I wasn't really invested in being friends or, being a bro or, hey dude, knocking fists next time I see them. I just wanted to get my stuff and get out, so it was easy for me. It was pretty transactional. And so it was, I never was conflicted about it. And so I mean, there are times when like you're not going to get any support. And so you can't blow up and do whatever. So I would just go right close to them and just say, you got to stop or this is going to turn out badly for you. Right. Stop. I'm not going to do this. Stop. There was a story where I can say his name because he's dead. Kirby Puckett. He hit on me at a game. This was years ago. In fact, it was Bo Jackson was coming back from the hip surgery.
Okay. And
I was in Minneapolis to do a story. And he had just had a baby and he's talking to some TV guy and about the little fella's keeping me up at night. Whoa, the little fella. And Kirby Puckett's supposed to be one of the best guys in baseball, right? So he gets done and I said, do you have a couple minutes? I wanted to ask you about Bo coming back. And it was nice. He talked to me. And next night I'm still there because Bo didn't play. And I see him next to the batting cage and he says to me, hey, I checked into you and why don't we hook up next time I'm in Baltimore? And I said, you know what, why are you saying this to me? And he said, I know all about you. Why don't we hook up when we're in Baltimore? And I said, does this really work on anybody? I said, you meet me for 5 minutes and now you're saying, let's hook up in Baltimore. And I said, what about the little fella?
That's awesome. That's so good.
What about the little fella keeping you up on, So he's like, it must be a black thing. And I said, you're ridiculous. I go upstairs. I sit next to this woman, and that was my first experience with him. And I said to her, I can't believe what just happened. I always heard he was such a great guy. And she tells me that she did a freelance job with him and he kept hitting on her. At the end, he said to her, let's get this straight up front. And it was something criminal. I guess I should be careful, even though he's dead. How much would it take to keep you quiet?
Wow. And
I said, are you serious? And she said, yeah. And I said, did you tell anybody? Because Andy McPhail was the GM. I said, did you tell anybody? And she said, no, I'm afraid they'll just run me off and yank my credential and everything else. And I said, I've got to tell you, if that happened to me, I would have walked up here. I would have written the story. And I don't care what would happen. I don't care. You're not going to win because he was so popular, but I wouldn't care. Somebody joking about rape it's not funny to me.
You know what the sad thing is, though? The aftermath would have been huge public defense for Kirby Puckett.
Exactly.
Just some gold digger trying to make money off his name, blah, 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 blah. And you never write again because you're now known as a gold digger who's trying to write off Kirby Puckett.
And where people were slashing your tires and throwing trash at you and everything else.
Exactly.
You leave the country. But there was a postscript because I wrote the anecdote as part of a column about Lisa coming back from Australia. And Don Fear, to his credit, the head of the baseball union, called me and said, I want to know who that guy is. And I said, I got to ask my friend if it's okay to tell you. Uh-huh. And she said, yeah. And they called him into the office and said, you better cut this bullshit or you're going to be in serious trouble.
Right.
And I don't think he did. I mean, he came in and he was good for like a month and then he was back to it. But, and when I asked other guys, they said, oh yeah, he's a dog. And I said, then why are you guys all writing this stuff about the cherubic Kirby Puckett, the lovely, cheerful Kirby Puckett, like when it's not true at all and you know it.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think that's one of the best reasons to have diverse voices is that, a better version of the truth has a better chance of coming out.
I just want to say, if you ever write your memoir, I have the title for it, and it is I can talk about this because he's dead.
Well, I told David Black, because we share an agent, David Black, and we got together a couple weekends ago, and I told him if I ever write a memoir, I'm going to call it Crabgrass because you can't kill me.
That's awesome.
We were laughing, yeah. I said I already got the title, Crabgrass.
Well, Jeanette, I'm actually really happy that we did this because I feel like we've never had a face-to-face conversation, just DM or whatever. And I'm a big admirer of your career, like a really big admirer of your career and your work.
Oh, same to you. Same to you.
So yeah, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
I want to thank today's guest, Jeanette Howard, for joining me on Two Writers Sing and Yang. You can follow Jeanette on Twitter at Jeanette Howard and purchase All In wherever books are sold. If you have a chance and enjoy Two Writers Sing and Yang, please consider going to the vehicle of your choice and leaving a nice review. I make no money for doing this, and I depend on word of mouth. Music is by the great MC White Owl. Thanks again for joining me, and remember, keep writing.